One is the East Harlem neighborhood rezoning. Calvin Brown and Eric Olson of the Manhattan office are here to present the council models.
Good morning, Commissioners. On November 21st, the New York City Council Land Use Committee voted and recommended modifications to the zoning map and text amendment applications approved by the City Planning Commission for the East Harlem neighborhood rezoning. For purposes of scope determination, Eric Olson and I will go through the recommended modifications related to zoning boundaries, maximum permitted heights and densities, and the minimum non-residential floor area requirements and the MIH options that were provided by City Council. So I'll turn it over to Eric Olson to go through the first set of modifications.
Thank you, Calvin. I'll try to make this fairly quick. There will be a number of images, and I'll be going through them fairly quickly here, just to explain the mods. So Council removed a few portions of the rezoning area, as you can see here on the slide. One of these areas is the east side of Madison Avenue between 126th and 127th Street. The R7A was removed from this area, and a portion of the mid-block R7B as well. The other area that was removed from the rezoning area is the west side of Park Avenue, the block front between 120th and 121st Street. You can see the final zoning map here on this slide. City Council also modified the maximum permitted density on both Park and 3rd Avenues. So new R7D districts with a maximum FAR of 5.6 have been proposed on the southern end of Park Avenue in the areas that you can see on the slide. A new R8A district with a maximum permitted FAR of 7.2 has been proposed in the area you can see on the slide here. And a new M16R9 district with a permitted maximum FAR of 8.5 is proposed in the area you can see there north of 127th Street on the east side of Park Avenue. And there are some new 10 FAR districts as well that have been proposed by Council for the modifications. They're circled on the slide here. The proposed C64 and M16R10 districts would now have a maximum permitted FAR of 10. Most of the proposed R10 districts in this area would also have a maximum permitted FAR of 10. The maximum permitted FAR of 12 was maintained on the block on the east side of Park Avenue between 118th and 119th Street. So moving over to 3rd Avenue, a new 10 FAR district was proposed in the area you see on the slide here, north of 122nd Street on 3rd Avenue. This would maintain the C46 designation, but have the 10 FAR modified through the special district. Similarly, the rest of the northern portion of 3rd Avenue would still be the C46 with a modified FAR. However, the rest of the avenue in that area would be 9 FAR. The southern portion between 104th and 112th Street would be an R9 designation with 9 FAR. And that's the total FAR slide that you can see the FAR scheme for the entire zoning boundary. So moving on to the maximum permitted height modifications. As you can see, the council modified maximum permitted heights on Park, 3rd, 2nd Avenue, as well as Lexington Avenue and 116th Street, the intersection there. On Park Avenue, a 215-foot height limit was introduced in R7D, R8A, and R9 equivalent districts, as you can see on the map here. Recall that 215 feet was put into scope with the A text. A 275-foot height limit was proposed for 10 FAR R10 equivalent districts on Park Avenue. You can see there. And a 295-foot height limit would apply to the 12 FAR R10 equivalent districts on Park Avenue. On 3rd Avenue, a 215-foot height limit would impact the majority of the avenue. There would also be a 235-foot height limit in the 10 FAR area north of 122nd Street. Along 2nd Avenue, the underlying 175-foot height limit would apply. This was modified to an R9A district, from an R9 to an R9A district with that 175-foot height cap. However, within the TA districts, or the special transit land use districts, a 215-foot height limit would apply to buildings with subway entrance facilities, and a 325-foot height limit would apply to buildings with ancillary subway facilities, including ventilation facilities. And finally, at least in terms of the height modifications, the intersection of Lexington and 116th Street here would have a 205-foot height cap. and that is the entirety of the height scheme in terms of maximum heights in the rezoning area. So I'll then hand it off to Calvin for the remainder of the council mods.
Thank you. So the council adopted amended text to modify the non-residential floor area requirements in the Park Avenue special sub-district for the special East Harlem corridor districts. For the R9 equivalents, the minimum non-residential floor area requirement was reduced from 1.5 to 1. And in the in the R10 equivalent districts, the minimum non-residential floor area was reduced to 2. And so you can see in the C64, which is the R10 equivalent, it was reduced from to the 2 to the 1.5, and in the R9 equivalents, it was reduced to the from 1.5 to 1. In terms of the MIH options, the City Council adopted option 1, 25% of the residential floor area to be made available for an average of 60% of the AMI, and then option 3, 20% of the residential floor area to be made available for an average of 40% of the AMI. And those concludes the council mods. So we'll turn over to the commission to determine scope determination.
Any questions? Commissioner Efron.
I'm sorry, option 3 as opposed to option 2. Isn't 1 and 3?
1 and 3.
Yeah, option 3.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, and this is within scope,
Yes.
right? Okay, so by a show of hands, could we, all in favor of sending a letter to the council? Thank you, it's early, I can't get my mind function. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 2 is the Sendero Verde East 111th Street project. Sarah Elmore of Manhattan will present for scope determination.
Hey, good morning, commissioners. This is a city council mod regarding Sendero Verde East 111th Street. The commission voted to approve applications for a zoning map amendment, zoning text amendment, UDAP designation and project approval, acquisition, and 3 special permits to modify the height and setback, yard and parking requirements and use regulations within a large-scale general development on October 2nd, 2017. On November 21st, 2017, the City Council Land Use Committee voted to approve the applications with a modification to the application for UDAP designation and project approval to require that a minimum of 11,450 square feet of lot area be dedicated to community gardens or passive recreation use, and that a minimum of an additional 18,000 square feet be dedicated to use as publicly accessible open space. And there are no other modifications. The proposed modification raises no land use or environmental issues requiring further review. Thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Levin.
Were those the amounts that were in the plans that were shown to us? I mean, is this just codifying what was already planned, or are these numbers?
It wasn't the specific amount. I believe the community gardens was around that amount, but it was about 16,900 square feet that was shown for the publicly accessible area in the plans that were shown on the.
And the modification is now for?
To 18,000.
18, so a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay. May I have an assent by a show of hands to send a letter to the City Council that the modification is within scope? Thank you.
Item number 3, for scope determination, the East River 50s text amendment. Commissioner Cerullo is recused on this item, and Bob Tuttle of the Manhattan office will present the proposed council modifications.
Good morning, Commissioners. On November 15th, the Commission voted to approve the text amendment proposed by the East River 50s Alliance with co-applicants Borough President Gail Brewer, New York City Council members Ben Kalos and Dan Garodnick, and New York State Senator Liz Krueger. The text amendment was subsequently approved with modifications by the City Council on November 21st. The modification removes the vesting provision that was added by the Commission. This provision was intended to enable construction to proceed under the previously applicable regulations for developments with building permits that were issued and foundation construction that had commenced prior to the effective date of the new rezoning, provided that those foundations were completed within 1 year of that date. DCP staff believes the modification by City Council is within scope. I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions? Okay, by a show of hands, would you indicate an assent to send the letter to the City Council that the proposed mod is within scope?
Well, so the agency
question?
is confirming that it's within scope, so we don't really have an option.
No, that's the
Within
sole
scope,
question
not
is whether or not it's within scope.
All right.
What? Let's try this again. By a show of hands, would you indicate your assent to send this to the council, a letter to the council? Thank you.
Thank you.
We can ask Commissioner Cirillo to come back into the hearing room, and we move on to item number 4, the special Harlem River Waterfront District, council modifications for a determination of scope. Oscar Oliver Didio of the Bronx office will present the council mods.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here to present proposed modifications from the City Council to the Special Harlem River Waterfront District Amendments and Expansion Area. As a super quick reminder, these were zoning map and text amendments to update the 09 Special Harlem River Waterfront District text and expand the waterfront access plan to the south. It was certified last summer. CPC voted on it October 4th, and the City Council sent their mods on November 22nd. As part of their a summary of their City Council mods, City Council has revised 87324 by adding an authorization to modify the streetlight provisions for parcels 2, 3, and 4. They also revised 8761A, the special provision for certain fire apparatus access roads, to allow one of its required 13-foot sidewalks be substituted for a pedestrian path in the shore public walkway. In terms of vesting provisions, they revised also 8773A to remove vesting provisions for parcel 12. This parcel will then have to comply with the new special district rules. And the scope and determination, it was determined that the additional setback requirement added under 8701A is actually out of scope. In order for the modification to be within scope, the phrase "or exterior street," whichever is closest to the shoreline, in the definition of Mayor Deegan Expressway street line, should be stricken from the proposed modification. So it would be a text. It would remove this part of the text. With the above reference change, which we've actually discussed with City Council staff, the proposed modification raises no land use or environmental issues requiring further review. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Ortiz.
Just a quick question. You mentioned the removal of vesting provisions.
Yes.
Does that impact any particular project?
Yeah. Well, parcel 12, there's a proposal, and actually it had a waterfront certification that was given recently. They would now have to comply with a visual corridor that actually applies in the rear of their particular development. It affects like 20 feet of their rear yard, and it would require moving around and shuffling some of the parking and the ramp.
But they haven't begun construction?
No, they have not. They have not.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner De La Luz.
I'm just curious. I feel like this is the first time since I've been on the commission that a language in the text was determined, a portion of language in the text was determined to be out of scope. I'm just wondering how that got past us.
I think it was just like an error in terms of the actual text. I don't think it was sort of purposely added for a reason, and we noticed that actually after the vote.
Could I just clarify on that question, Michelle? This was something that we noted, the change that they had made, we had a conversation with the council about, because we noted that the change would have actually made us need to make a determination that this wasn't in scope. And typically, we would have had an opportunity to note this before they passed the text, but there was a lot going on at that time, both on the council's side and our side. And so the council actually suggested that we utilize this provision, which has not ever really been utilized, that we're aware of, to make this change. And so that's how we're doing it, so that we can be able to proceed with this.
Okay, thank you.
The one other thing that I might note is just substantively, usually one thinks of the highway and the exterior street as lying one above the other, but in fact, the exterior street didn't align with the highway. And so this is about as minor and technical as it gets.
Gotcha, okay. This is the first time I see it.
Other questions? Okay, by show of hands, please indicate our assent to send a letter to the council if the mod is within scope. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the special review session. And
What about Bedford?
No, wait,
Oh, sorry. Yes, Bedford. Thank you very much. Item number 5, Bedford Union Armory. Kevin Kraft of Brooklyn is here to present.
Good morning, Commissioners. On November 21st, the City Council requested a modification to the zoning text amendment for Bedford Union Armory, located in Brooklyn Community District 9. The City Council would apply MIH Option 1 and remove MIH Option 2.
That's it?
That's it.
Ready for a long dissertation on that. Any questions? Okay, by a show of hands, may I see an assent to send a letter to City Council indicating the mod is within scope? Thank you. Thank you.
Now the special review session is concluded, and we'll move on to start our public hearing.